One. All right, everyone. Second video in our targets by round in a PPR fantasy draft here. We got a previous video where we talked about some of our favorite picks in the first round and some guys that may be too risky that we avoid. We're gonna do the same thing in these middle rounds. And like we said in that first video, these are the rounds that really make champions. You're not really losing your fantasy football championship in these rounds, but you can get guys that far exceed their average draft position here. And those are the guys that we're going to be talking about now. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. You're going to keep getting this great content, whether it's for fantasy, survivor, betting, or just straight up picks. We're going to keep it going all season long as we have the last few years. So keeping that rolling. All right, starting off in round 5, you want to talk about picks within the top 40. Go watch our other video here, rounds 5 through 9. Sliwa, I'm going to jump in and start talking about someone that I think is really intriguing, and that's QB Anthony Richardson. Played his rookie season last year. We got hurt pretty early on, but even in those few games that we got a glimpse of how talented this guy is and why the Colts drafted him so highly. And again, even with his absence, you got a huge step up from a guy like Michael Pittman Jr., who finished at wide receiver 13. His ADP is a little bit higher than this. He's got a good weapon with him. He's got a great running back in the backfield with Jonathan Taylor, and great weapons on himself with his 2 legs and just huge frame at 250. I want to know what you think about Anthony Richardson, and would you be taking him at QB5 in the 5th round here?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely intriguing, and this is one of the picks like we've talked about that. I mean, when you get to round 5, it's not going to lose you your league, but this is the type of guy that could win you your league potentially. And he draws a lot of comparisons to Cam Newton,
Mm-hmm.
big frame, big quarterback who could also run the ball. And honestly, I mean, I'm on the Colts this year.
Yeah.
They haven't made a lot of big splashes, but I mean, they
The
were still
Colts don't do
solid
that.
last
They're
year, even
good.
with Gardner Minshew. And yeah, I mean, they have wide receiving weapons between Pittman, Josh Downs, and
Yep.
then
I
the
like Josh
rookie
Downs.
Adonai Mitchell from Texas. So I mean, he has 3 receivers who could catch the ball, and then Jonathan Taylor, arguably best running back in the league, or right in there in the top 3. So I mean,
Yeah.
he's got plenty of options. I mean, I need him to throw the ball a little bit better, and he didn't get a lot of opportunities to do that last year. I've
Mhm.
read some of the early camp reports, and they're not necessarily giving him the most praise on his passing game, but you could take all those reports with a grain of salt. Everybody's trying to put something out there that early in the season
And
when
people said the same thing about Cam Newton too. And then he
right.
went off and won 15 games. Not that the Colts
Yeah,
probably win
no.
this year, but I would say this going back, I kind of posed a question and I'm taking it back over. I think for how few games he's played, I'm not ready to make the Cam Newton comparison, which isn't fair to begin with, given his MVP status. But given the lack of reps that I've had from Anthony Richardson, I probably would avoid him here. Now we're talking a year from now, next season, I could warrant this being a top 3 pick, a top 3 QB pick, just given his legs and hopefully him taking a step up. Now, you talked about guys that could potentially win your league. If he takes a step up this quickly in year 2, which is really year 1.5 in my mind, then yeah, he's got a, like Josh Allen type potential where he's going to run and get a lot of touchdowns with his legs and a lot of yards with his legs. Sure, he's going to turn the ball over, but he's going to put up a lot of points in the process too. So I
Yeah.
personally, I don't think I can do it. It'd be an exciting, fun pick. Um, I usually don't like exciting, fun picks for my quarterbacks. I like to know what I'm getting with my quarterback.
See, I'm the opposite. I usually take quarterbacks late, but yeah, probably not round
If you take them
5.
late and know what you're getting late, doesn't just taking them early doesn't mean you're taking them late doesn't mean you're taking a chance necessarily.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Just the fact that he could also run the ball, get that dual
It's
threat
so exciting.
with fantasy, especially on the fantasy level. Yeah, I mean, he's more intriguing to me. I mean, yeah, maybe you avoid him, but he's definitely on my radar. Maybe I probably won't take him at 46, but
That's what I'm saying.
drops
In
drops
round
one
5,
round.
yeah. And you know what? He'll and like I draft a lot of like-minded people where I know that Anthony Richardson isn't getting taken 46th. Now, when he goes to the next round, that's when you start to think, okay, how are my first five picks laid out? Do I have my two running backs, two wide receivers, and a flex, or swap one of those out for a tight end? And now do I take my chance on quarterback? I think it makes sense there. I usually like to see my roster get filled out a little bit more before quarterback. And again,
No,
that's a personal thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I would only. My thing is like Mahomes is a great quarterback, but fantasy wise, I can't
No,
remember. I think he
he's
finished
good.
nine last year.
Or maybe it
So
was
like,
either way.
right, but yeah. So like for that reason, I mean, I'm always trying to take a quarterback that could also run.
Yeah, and you look at the quarterbacks last year that finished in the top five. Number one, Josh Allen, you mentioned him. Two, Jalen Hurts, who had so many touchdowns from the tush push. Dak Prescott, not a running quarterback anymore, just a really prolific offense in Dallas. Lamar Jackson, MVP. He was the fourth drafted quarterback, finished at four. But Jordan Love at five. Again, not a running quarterback. It kind of surprises me that J Love was five, but that's um, intriguing. And I guess I'm going to segue from Richardson to Jordan Love, who ended at five last year. I don't see Jordan Love doing much worse than he did last year. Like I like the Packers offense a lot. I like the wide receivers they have, really young, thinking they're going to take a step up. Jordan Love takes a step up potentially, just given how young he is or how inexperienced he is, because he's been a backup for a little bit. So it makes it hard for me to see like a Anthony Richardson breaking the top five. I could see him getting to five, but like I don't see him really beating a Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson group.
Right. Yeah. It would take an insane season.
Now I
I
could
mean,
see him getting five because Jordan Love, maybe he doesn't finish five, but I like what the Packers got going on a lot. As a Bears fan, that's tough to say, but they got some great talent at wide receiver. For really great potential, how about? But you know what? Even if they don't take a step up, Jordan Love had that talent and finished five. So again, hard for me to justify the Anthony Richardson pick.
yeah. No, I would agree.
That was the only thing I had in round five. Not a ton of stuff I need to talk about. I could talk about any of these players, anyone that you wanted to highlight.
I'm just. I know everybody's so high on the Texans, CJ Stroud from last year.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I'm just a hater, but I don't see, I mean, it could be a pretty similar season, but I just don't see the amount of success that they had last year, maybe at least passing the ball. They do have more options. They added in Stephon Diggs, but between Nico Collins in round four projecting and then Stephon Diggs round five, I don't know. I don't because I'm personally high on Tank Dell, who's they got going a couple rounds later. So
Yep.
I think one of those guys is you're gonna definitely be taking an early swing on that you'll probably end up missing.
Agreed.
And I
Agreed.
think
I
that's gonna be
also don't
Stephon
think,
Diggs.
yeah, Stephon Diggs, 30 years old, already regressed a little bit last season, especially towards the tail end. He was not the Stephon Diggs that we were used to seeing. Like you said, like for one of those three guys, they have to um fall compared to their ADP. I don't think all three of them exceed. And if you're gonna pick one guy that doesn't, I actually am not a big Nico Collins guy this year, even though he helped me a lot last year. I'm not a Stephon Diggs guy either, and part of it is I'm not convinced that the Texans, what they did last year, is repeatable and replicable. So that comes from me being a true hater in the fact that every year I see teams that blow up for one season, and then people are like, oh, what are they going to do next season? And then they don't repeat it. I'm not saying that necessarily has to be the Texans, but they are a prime candidate this year for that.
Right. I mean, it was kind of the Eagles last year. Just made it to the
Yeah.
Super Bowl and then just pretty much fell apart last season.
Yeah,
I can't,
compared to their
yeah.
expectations, yeah, they did.
Yeah. 'Cause I mean, CJ Stroud played great. I mean, he was probably, but in my mind, I would say he's like an elite game manager, which is definitely underselling him. But he doesn't take as many risks, which was going to win you games. But I don't like, at least in the fantasy world, is not going to be the most helpful for your team. Like they have a
No,
good defense. DeMeco Ryans is going to rely on that defense, so they're not going to be taking as many shots, at least from what I've seen. They play solid
don't have
football,
to.
which is going to win you games, but I don't know if it's going to put you up insane fantasy numbers for all those receivers.
And you know what? We've only seen 1 year from CJ Stroud. If that's just the tip of the iceberg, then
Yeah,
Stephon
that would be
Diggs could
completely
have an
wrong.
insane season. So
Right.
it's all perspective. And what do you think here? Now, do I think the Texans to really take a big step back. I don't. They have so much talent on really just about every aspect of the football field. It's just, can CJ Stroud do what he did last year again? And it's really even more so. Can teams figure out, it's Bobby Slowick, right? That's the offensive coordinator there in Houston.
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Can teams figure out Bobby Slowick? And so sometimes teams are able to figure out guys, and that's why teams have 1 year of burst and then they fall back. That's kind of what the Eagles and Nick Sirianni were last year. They were unstoppable, and then teams figured them out a little bit, took a step back. Will that happen with the Texans? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it happens every year. And so the Texans are a candidate for that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. That was my only other point on this round.
Got it. Then we'll move on to round 6. Let's see what we highlighted first. George Pickens here. So now this was before they Brandon Ayuk to the Steelers rumors at this time, but I'm looking and highlighting George Pickens here because I'm looking for wide receivers again that are going to far exceed their ADP. This is kind of this wide receiver 25 to 35 is prime territory to get someone to shoot up and help you exceed in your fantasy league and get you the playoffs and championship. When I look at wide receivers last year that did much better, let's say 10 spots, not 10 picks in the draft, but 10 spots positionally better. These guys are wide receiver ones, and especially wide receiver ones in solid, if not good offenses. Now, Pittsburgh has not to this point been a good offense. Now you get the emergence of Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, and that makes it at least a solid offense. You got a great two-headed backfield with Najee Harris and help me out here.
Jalen Warren.
Jalen Warren, yes, thank you. And George Pickens, he does not have to fight target share with Deontay Johnson anymore, and that's probably why they're looking at Brandon Ayuk. But if Brandon Ayuk doesn't work out, then George Pickens is the clear #1 guy in an offense that is solid and has a capable quarterback thrown to them. You saw what Justin Fields even did last year with DJ Moore. You don't have to be crazy talented to produce really good numbers at wide receiver. And I say crazy talented. Your quarterback does not have to be crazy talented to get great numbers at wide receiver in production. And that defense in Pittsburgh is pretty uncharacteristic of Pittsburgh defenses lately and has been awful. This team is going to have to throw a lot, something they weren't able to do very well last year. If they can turn that around, there's a lot of room for improvement for George Pickens, who's still a young receiver looking to take that leap. And I want to say it's his 3rd year, which is where wide receivers typically take that big leap if they're going to. So just kind of headhunting breakouts here. I like George Pickens in this round.
Yeah, and then I got one other one on this board here, and my pick would be Terry McLaurin. Been a solid receiver.
I got one more boxed up. Oh, never mind. I also have Terry McLaurin boxed up because I love Terry McLaurin. You go. I was trying to do something fun there. I thought he was my second box. Go
Nah,
for Terry McLaurin because I'm on him as well.
yeah, I mean, he's been a very, very solid receiver for the last 4 or 5 years now, and I blanking on his age. He's getting up there, but he's not quite that old
That's
yet.
that's a perfect description for him. I'm flying around his age right now, but that's exactly what he is. He's getting up there, but not there yet.
Right. So like he might start declining, which is rough,
28
but
is his last
okay, yeah.
year. He's
I
fine.
would yeah, but I mean for me it's all the quarterback position.
Mhm.
Jaden Daniels coming in, the electrifying quarterback from LSU, run, pass the ball, but he's gonna take those risks. And the main point here is he's already gonna be head and shoulders above any quarterback that's been throwing the ball to Terry McLaurin throughout his career in Washington. I mean, he's probably had like Fitzpatrick,
He's had
Heineke,
some tough. He's had some tough.
Howell. Like it hasn't been good, and regardless of who's throwing the ball, he still puts up good enough numbers. I always, almost always have him on my team, and
Man,
we'll
love him.
rotate him through that flex spot. But I mean, if Jaden Daniels is the real deal, lives up to the hype, I I can only see Terry McLaurin as a wide receiver one, like you just mentioned, wide receiver one in a good situation. If Jaden Daniels is a really good rookie year, then I think Terry McLaurin blows wide receiver 31 out of the water. It finishes maybe in the as a ADP in like the 3rd round.
You could not have reflected my thoughts better. Everything you said, I agree with, and that's why I have him highlighted here. He was drafted as a 22nd top wide receiver last year in the draft, finished 31. They're putting him here as wide receiver 31. They're saying that the difference between Jaden Daniels and the quarterback play in that rotating door and with Sam Howell
Yeah,
there
it's somehow.
is negligible. And I can't believe that. I really like
Yeah,
Jaden
that's
Daniels. He's
ridiculous.
about as reliable as he comes. Talk about a high floor, especially as a wide receiver 31. He's for sure if he plays all 17 games now, and Jaden Daniels is even half as good as people describe him to be, and the reports out of training camp have been great, I guarantee he beats his wide receiver 31 ADP without a doubt in my mind. Um, a ton of upside here. Now, just given his career and body of work, he's probably not going to be a top 10 just because a top 10 receiver, just because we haven't seen that from him. Now it could happen, but top 20, like I am expecting him to be a top 20 receiver this year with Jaden Daniels. I just
Yeah.
I would be surprised not to see it.
Yeah, unless like Jahan Dotson or one of those guys somehow
And he's
passes him up,
solid.
but
Yeah, and John Dotson's a good receiver, but I do like you're a rookie quarterback, you usually like to go to the sure-handed veteran receiver too. And for a veteran status, like it's again, 28's not too old. Like this guy's got a lot of talent. I think Jaden Daniels is going to figure that out really quickly. And if he's got the capability that we've seen in college and we've seen out of training camp, then I foresee good things for Terry McLaurin this year.
yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Curious what you have to say about Kenneth Walker. I was huge on him when he came into the league,
Michigan State.
especially Big Ten fans. Loved
Yep.
him at Michigan State. He was phenomenal, and then really broke out onto the scene when he arrived in Seattle, started getting those touches, and then we've kind of seen it level back down, lost some of that hype train. So I'm curious where you're standing with Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, this is the range of running backs where you can get a lot of value here in the draft. I'm looking at top 10 running backs last year. You got Brees Hall, who was the RB 15, ETN at RB 10, Rashad White RB 26, Mostert 41, Joe Mixon 12. You got Jahmyr Gibbs at 13, like you Kamara at 21. This is the range here where you can get some guys to shoot up and get in top 10. And I think if you're looking at these running backs I just listed that really exceeded their ADP, like Kyren Williams too, that I didn't mention. These are guys that come from uncertain running back backfields. It's been committee for a while in Seattle. It's kind of Shane Waldron's thing, which is why I'm down on DeAndre Swift. But it kind of his thing. Now you get a new offense there. You get guys that are hungry to prove themselves. We've seen the burst from Kenneth Walker. If he can establish himself as the RB1 there in Seattle, he's got much higher than RB17 potential. That's the kind of running back that can put you up into RB top 10 status. Now I don't love him, but it's a risk. There are other guys like Zach Charbonnet in that backfield that Zach Charbonnet could be the guy that I'm talking about in Seattle. But from what I've seen with Kenneth Walker, I love the tenacity and tough running that he has. And again, these uncertain running backfields, like Rashad White was in, like Raheem Mostert was in, and like Kyren Williams was in. Um, and even looking at other guys like Jaylen Warren, who really outproduced versus ADP, and same with like Chuba Hubbard, albeit they're farther back in their running back rank in 2023. Those are guys that take advantage of the situation and take advantage of their ADP, quite honestly, because the uncertainty has these guys fall and slide in the fantasy draft, and they really outkick their coverage there when given the opportunity. So I think Kenneth Walker is a guy with a higher ceiling there and some potential to exceed his ADP as RB17 is the real point there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, you're like you never know. He could finish top 15. I mean, he is projected 17, and he could easily finish top 10.
And like I mentioned in the last video, your top 10 running backs are more often than not drafted outside of the RB10 spot. The more often, like that's where you're going to get your production. So you find your guys in your middle round and even late round that are going to be your running back ones and twos for the year. And that's Kenneth Walker's got that potential.
Yeah, and I imagine that Seattle offense, at least the passing offense, starts to slow down. I mean, they already started to slow down last year. Imagine they mix in a little bit more of the run game.
Yeah, it's all. I would think they do mix in more of the run game. It's all about Geno, obviously a quarterback there. Sam Howell, I'm pretty sure is the backup there too. So we'll see how the quarterback situation plays out in Seattle. But that's all I had here. We'll move on to round 7. I think we had a good list there. Um, I get a feeling that we're on the same page in this one, but I'm going to take the lead here with Dalton Kincaid. I'll just go flat out and say I really like Dalton Kincaid this year. I think he could be the Sam Laporta of last year, where this guy is uber athletic and in a great passing offense with a great quarterback. And the vanishing via trade of Stephon Diggs is really helpful for a situation as Josh Allen looking for a new number one go-to target guy. And I think Dalton Kincaid can be that guy in a lot of situations. I think we saw him take the role over from Dawson Knox later in the season and really excel. And you see why the Bills draft this guy so highly. I think he will take a step up this year, which is why he's being drafted as tight end 5 as opposed to his tight end status last year. But in terms of tight ends that I think right now, as of what we know now, that can take a step up, I think he's the number one guy to beat their ADP in terms of a draft spot here.
I like it. I mean, we talked about Stephon Diggs leaving the team too. I mean, there's just less options for the ball to go around. And from what we've seen from Buffalo the last 4 years now, they love to pass the ball.
We're gonna pass. Even like James Cook, who's a great running back, he's not a between the tackles guy. They want to get the guy out in space. Like they're going to spread it out. They're going to continue to spread it out. They're going to continue to pass the ball. I don't think losing Stephon Diggs is going to change the complete identity of this offense.
I also think I hadn't looked into it too much before, but Aaron Jones with Minnesota here at 64, I think he could also be a great value pick. I mean, we saw him play very well in Green Bay. In Minnesota, I mean, they have a great O-line,
Yep.
and they're also going to have JJ McCarthy. So it's give and take. I mean, you know you're going to want to pass the ball still to Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, these
Oh,
guys
yeah.
that you
Jordan
spent a
Addison.
lot of money on, yeah, and
Mhm.
a lot of capital on. But at the same time, we haven't seen a dynamic runner in Minnesota in a little while now, but I do think that offense is built for him to succeed. I think Alexander Madison was probably one of the worst,
Trash.
if not the
Trash.
worst starting running back in the NFL last year. So I do
Yeah,
think Aaron Jones in round 7 is really enticing at 18.
I agree. I think, the reason he's falling so far at RB18 is because, he's new offense, 29 years old, got some miles on him. So that's the downside, but he's a great running back. And again, if he was going to have a resurgent year, he's not sharing a backfield with AJ Dillon anymore. He's got a chance to revert himself as a 3 down back, but it's hard to be a 3 down back at 29. It's been done and it can be done, but it's hard. So he's got his work cut out for him, but I can see the value there as well. I like that point.
Yeah, just a proven player. I mean, yeah, he won't finish top 5, but you might get an RB10, something like that. And even
Yeah,
if that's the case, you stole some value.
yeah, even like RB, even if you fit, because running backs are just so hard to come by and predict. More importantly, as I previously mentioned, if you can even get him to finish RB15, like that's a very big win here because you see these rounds that we have for every 10 picks, there's like one, maybe two running backs taken. So the difference, as opposed to seeing 5 or 6 wide receivers here, um, they're fewer and harder to come by. So if you can get a running back that can exceed their ADP, it's well worth the pick just about in any situation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Anything else you wanted to talk about here?
Nothing else from me. We can jump on to round 8.
Rhonda, I think this is one that I really liked a lot in terms of like I see a lot of guys that I would like to target. I think that could take my team a little bit over the top. First one would be Rashee Rice. I drafted him last year as like the last pick in my round, which is a picking rookies is a good pick because they don't have a ton of expectations. They can really exceed those expectations. But it's hard for a guy like Rashee Rice that was kind of sitting on the sidelines for a while and then started to emerge a little bit in the second half while keeping a spot on my bench the whole time. This year, second year. I think he's going to emerge as the number one wide receiver, not the number one guy with Travis Kelce in town, but the number one wide receiver. And I think um, he's going to be an asset to this Chiefs team and continue to grow with them and with Patrick Mahomes. Now, is he going to be insane? Probably not. But with Patrick Mahomes throwing you definitely have that potential, and we've seen that before from wide receivers in Kansas City. So again, talking about guys that can do a lot better, I think Rashee Rice could be a lot better than wide receiver 36 this year. and anyone can when you have Patrick Mahomes throwing you the ball and running plays that Andy Reid is calling and drawing up. So I like the spot there a lot. I like him a lot more in standard leagues. If anyone is still listening is in standard leagues, because he's gets these huge plays, sometimes touchdown reliant, but not a PPR monster because they have Travis Kelce to really feed that ball in third down, third and short situations. So I think a little bit better in the standard leagues, but still a lot of value here with Rashee Rice at wide receiver 36.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, like you said, with Patrick Mahomes is throwing the ball, you can't really go wrong with grabbing a receiver on the Kansas City offense. Like, even everybody was rostering MVS last year, who's not a good or great receiver, but you know
Yeah.
what, Patrick Mahomes is throwing the ball, he's at least going to get a reception here or there and a chance at a touchdown, whether he catches it or not.
Yeah, they drafted this guy in the second round for a reason last year. He just fell short of 1,000 yards and 80 receptions, playing 16 to 17 games. I really have to think, and he didn't even like play the first few games. Like this guy is going to do better than last year. I love Rush. I even liked him last year without knowing a thing about him, except knowing that he was a rookie wide receiver for the Chiefs. Now that I've seen what he can do and seen the kind of connection with Patrick Mahomes, especially given how bad the Chiefs receivers and how unreliable they were at catching the ball, if this guy can be a dude that Pat Mahomes can lean on, that's a great trust to have. And again, I have to think he does better than wide receiver 36.
Yeah, I think if you grab Rashee Rice a few rounds later, you might want to handcuff it with Xavier Worthy,
Yeah.
the rookie from Texas, fastest 40-yard dash at the combine on the Chiefs too now. I mean, just kind of going with the same note. You're trying to pick
Yeah.
which ones that's going to become that main wide receiver target. But I
Yeah.
think Xavier Worthy's kind of on the same boat. But right, Rashee Rice returning, understands the offense a little bit better,
I think
solidified
so. With
himself.
how complex that offense is, Worthy's probably going to take a similar route where it's going to take him a little bit of time to get into that offense. So next guy I highlighted Zamir White. We talked about his backup, Alexander Madison, who I don't think is very good. You don't think so either. I
No.
think Zamir White has a chance to be, no pun intended, the Rachaad White of this season, um, where he's in an uncertain offense and an uncertain backfield, and his ADP is going to reflect it. He's not terrific, but neither is Rachaad White. Rachaad White last year was RB26, finished RB4. Now, you're never going to have success picking guys in the RB20s and thinking they're going to land in the top five. But if there was someone to do that this year, it is Zamir White, because this Raiders offense is going to hopefully get better as you get a little more stable quarterback play. You got weapons at wide receiver. You're a big fan of Brock Bowers at tight end. This offense is starting to coming into shape. This could be a breakout year for Zamir White, given the lack of competition in that backfield too. Again, is it likely? I do not think so. Is it worth the pick? I do think so. He's got a
Yeah,
little upside. It's not about Zamir White. It's about whoever was in that role. It could be any running back outside of Alexander Madison. And I think they had a shot. They have a shot to break out because you are given the opportunity to be the RB1, three down back in an offense that is probably going to be on the field a lot given their defense too. Um, you see it time and time again, most recently with Rachaad White on the Bucks last year. Could happen this year. I think you got some breakout potential there.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and he's not going to face any competition at all. You mentioned Alexander Madison, and then RB3 is Amir Abdullah, who's been in the league for a long time now,
And
hasn't
then
done a whole lot.
he's a kick returner, punt returner.
Right,
You know, so
right. So he's going to have the chances. Whether he takes advantage of it, we'll find out. But
if he
right, like
does,
you're
he's
going to
up
have
for a
those
big season.
opportunities.
Yeah, if he takes advantage of it, he's up for a big season. This is a guy that I really like. Jayden Reed. I talked about how I love the Packers wide receiver room. I really like Jayden Reed. Um, Jordan Love, I mentioned top five QB last year. I don't really see does anyone see signs of him like regressing? He didn't even in my opinion, he didn't amaze. He was very solid. I think he's going to continue to be a very solid quarterback. And if he can amaze, I think a rising tide lifts all boats. Jayden Reed's going to get better. But even further than that, I think Jayden Reed takes a big step up this year. Hopefully alongside Love from a fantasy perspective. Jaden Reed last year, wide receiver 74. This is why you draft rookies. Wide receiver 74, finished top 25 in wide receiver. I don't understand why he's wide receiver 37. I think he's going to do better. He's in a great offense with the Packers, and I really like his spot here. I personally like him better from what I've seen on film than Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. I think he's got a much higher ceiling than both. Now, does he actually score more than them? That'll be seen. There's a lot of mouths to feed, naming with a really good young wide receiver trio, but I think he's got a ton of potential to emerge as potentially the best guy there in that locker room, in the wide receiver locker room. And again, finished top 25 wide receiver last year. I would expect him to do it again, quite honestly.
Oh yeah, I mean, if anything, we saw his role grow within that offense. He
Right?
gets
That's what
he
I'm
gets he
saying.
gets running opportunities, screens. Like he's their Swiss Army knife. He's like, if anything, I'd compare him to Debo.
Yeah.
Not a great comparison, but like that's how they like to use him. He's
I
gonna
mean,
get more
he's not as
touches than
big of a
just in the
bulldog,
passing
but
game.
yeah, he's like a better Curtis Samuel.
Right. Yeah. At least right now. Yeah.
Yeah, more
No, I
versatile,
like it.
higher,
Yeah.
like this
Always
guy.
just looking for those extra opportunities is really the key.
I mean, he's second round again. Same kind of thing I just mentioned with Rashid Rice. These guys drafted him in the second round for a reason. You saw good production of them in year one. Why do you think they're going to take a step back in year two? Like, what is there that he's going to do worse? I like the talent of this guy a lot. This is, I think, breakout potential, and I'm dying to get him in every single league that I can get. And if I lose, I lose because of it. I'm not gonna lose because my eighth round pick was Jaden Reed, but it certainly can help me win this year, and that's why I'm taking him in as many leagues as I can.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I like it.
Of all the guys I just mentioned here, it maybe of all the guys I mentioned in this video, Jaden Reed's my favorite. Like I'm all over it this year. And then Jaylen Warren, I talked about in the first video how in Atlanta you saw that switch between the Roddy White and Julio Jones. I think we're starting to see that in the running back room with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, especially in PPR leagues. Jaylen Warren, just a monster PPR guy, getting passes out of the backfield. You get now Arthur Smith is in Pittsburgh. We mentioned how much they love running the ball in Atlanta. If you can see Jaylen Warren keep that offensive production from the passing game and supplement that with more rushes, which you're bound to get with an Arthur Smith offense. You saw how big of a committee he used in Atlanta, even though they had great talent, but they relied on Tyler Algiers. They relied on Cordell Patterson, even though they had Bijan Robinson. You're going to see a lot more rushes from Jaylen Warren, I would bet, not at the detriment of his reception output. So I like Jaylen Warren to do a little bit better this year too. Now, I don't think he's got a massive ceiling, but I like him as a really high PPR floor. He was one of my always starters last year in PPR because he's going to get 10 catches for 40 yards every now and then. It just
Right.
helps those games.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be either Najee or Jalen, and I don't think you're wrong with going with Jalen Warren because,
The touches are
well, as you
going to
mentioned with,
Jaylen Warren. It's crazy.
but yeah, like you said, with Arthur Smith, they're definitely gonna run the ball more. And then they're definitely gonna start using Darnell Washington a bit more. He was
I'm
their
sure. I'm
their
sure.
early pick the year before, but you got a massive blocking tight end who is just gonna get even more utilization in the Arthur Smith offense.
Yeah. I mean, we saw what tight ends do in Arthur Smith's offense in Atlanta, so it just bodes
Yeah,
well.
with Kyle.
And you saw how much like they use the running backs out of the backfield. That's Jaylen Warren. Like even when it's Cordell
Yeah,
pre-Bijan
no,
Robinson, Cordell Patterson was a monster in fantasy out of the backfield in a PPR format. That could be Jaylen Warren. Again, breakout potential there. All right, round nine. Speaking of former tight ends in Arthur Smith's offense, Kyle Pitts here again, breakout potential. We say it every year. People have gotten bitten a couple of times with this guy. If you're willing to take the chance, I think this pick is self-evident. He's drafted top 5 in the draft. Guy's a freak athlete. If they start getting him the ball, you would think they could do great things with him. And I think what bodes well is TJ Hockenson's performance last year as Kirk Cousins tight end out there in Minnesota. Hawkinson, who I was lucky enough to get into my leagues, he finished at wide receiver 4, and I think he would have done better if it wasn't for a couple injuries too. So, and you look at the guys that he went behind. It's not surprising he finished behind like a Kelsey or even Laporta given his year. So I don't think there's much to say about Kyle Pitts except we all know the potential. It's will they get him the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, and I could be wrong on the timelines here, but if I'm not wrong, I'm pretty sure when Kirk was in Washington too, that's back when like Logan Thomas was a top 10 wide receiver or tight end.
Yeah,
Like he
Logan
definitely
Thomas
likes to use his tight ends.
in you know who was a super athletic tight end with Kirk Cousins down in Washington was Jordan Reed. Can never stay
Oh
healthy,
yeah,
but
exactly.
Jordan Reed was amazing out of Washington.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I mean, if history repeats itself, Kirk's
I,
definitely going to
I
be giving the
it's
ball
just
to Kyle
a
Pitts a lot.
take a chance on Kyle Pitts. I will be taking a chance on Kyle Pitts, and maybe I'll get burned by it, but I'm willing to do it. I guess if I'm a GM, I'm gonna go back here. If I'm a GM, think about any job ever that anyone's ever had. They need to answer to someone and say, like, this is why I did this. Same with the coaching staff, they're on the same page. How do you justify drafting Kyle Pitts fourth overall and never using him? Like
Yeah.
that's probably part of the reason why Smith got fired. Like, how do you even justify yourself there? So I have to assume someone, if only to save their job, will say, I'm going to use Kyle Pitts, and this is probably the year. I think this might be the last one. I really like Jackson Smith and Jigba. Again, a guy that can do a lot better than their ADP. A tremendous talent out of Ohio
Ohio
State.
State.
Last year didn't do all that great, but there's a wide receiver, a lot of wide receivers to feed in that offense. I'm not convinced that DK Metcalf is the guy in Seattle, and Tyler Lockett's certainly on his way out. If Geno Smith, which is a big if, can have the season he did last year, I really predict a breakout from Jackson Smith and Jigba. Guy's got a ton of talent in the world, and it's just going to come and go with the Seattle offense. He's got the talent, he's got the playmaking ability. It's just will the offense click around him? That's my only concern. But as the 90th pick in the draft, that's a risk I'm going to take, and I like him as a wide receiver with potential to even finish top 10 because he's got that kind of skill. Now, so they give him the ball, yes or no, but he there's no denying he's one of the most talented young wide receivers here. It's just yet to be seen because of his situation. But
Yeah,
again,
well, like
wide
when Seattle
receiver four.
drafted him,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just saying, yeah, like when Seattle drafted him late in that first round, everybody regarded it as a steal. They're like, I can't
It
believe
was
he
a steal.
dropped that far.
Yeah, yeah.
I know, but like, yeah, it's like we've said with a lot of these guys, it's just a matter of time before he gets a lot more touches.
I mean, and that's how you get. This is how you get guys um, that exceed their ADP in fantasy. Get young guys that have yet to take a step up. Be the first guy to take a flyer on them. And these guys are first, second round picks for a reason. They have the talent to do it. Will the guys around them do it as well? And will they make that jump? Is he a guarantee? By no means is it. But if there is something I trust in the NFL, it is wide receivers from Ohio State. You're seeing them succeed all over the league. I believe they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like how could you ever take DeAndre Hopkins over
Yeah,
JSN?
thank you. That's such a great point. The amount of upside differential between those guys is just insane. Like,
Yeah, like D Hop's already hurt. I mean, he's old. Like, yes, he was a
yeah,
an elite receiver a few years ago, but how could you take him over a first round pick who's gonna get more touches in this
yeah,
season?
without a doubt. Um, couldn't agree more, Sliwa. Thank you. Last pick, we got a minute left here, Sliwa. Javonte Williams, again, he's had his struggles in the past, but running backs that emerge and highly outproduce their ADP are guys that come from uncertain backfields and step up. That's what Javonte Williams has the opportunity to do. Will he or won't he? We'll find out. Maybe let him slip to round 10. I think it's a steal for round 10 because he's got the potential. If you are a running back one, you have the potential. The name and talent doesn't even matter so much as the opportunity. Get a guy 250 touches and he can make something happen for one season. Take a chance on a guy that has a backfield more or less to himself or can emerge as the number one bell cow guy.
Yeah, I mean, I took him a little bit too early last year. If I could get him in round 9 or 10, I'd probably do it again. He
Yeah,
was a big disappointment for me last year,
yeah,
but
he was.
to the same point, I mean, I'm taking guys who are RB ones, wide receiver ones. You're going for those opportunities, and he was coming off an injury, but he's still relatively young player. I mean, he is young, but I mean, you can't have it all, especially when you're drafting